Everyone, so we are back for another episode of OCD Live. I'm Ali Greymond. Today I want to talk to you guys about doctors and how to pick the right specialist to help you recover from OCD and really what to expect when you're going to see a specialist and how to pick a good one, how to recognize people that you probably shouldn't waste your time or your money on, and just kind of go over that. Also, as before, if you have any questions you want me to answer, then you can put them in the chat window on the side and I will answer them from there. Okay, so when it comes to the doctors, you have to kind of start out by knowing that chances of finding a doctor just by going to the doctor and like, oh, he knows stuff or she knows something about OCD is very, very slim. You might be, just in the right area of the world with, meeting just the right doctor who knows about OCD. But I mean, honestly, the chances are very, very low. Me personally, when I went to see a doctor, and if you guys don't know, then you can listen to some of my other videos, but basically I had OCD, got over it, and for the last, I don't know, at least like 6 years, I've been helping other people get over OCD as well. So when I had OCD and I had to go see a doctor, my doctor knew very, very little about it. Like, she knew that it was OCD, but I mean, by the time I went to see her, so did I. So it wasn't a big giant surprise or anything like that. But besides that, how to help the person recover from OCD, most of them don't know. The way you can easily tell if the doctor knows or not is if they start to talk about exposure and response prevention or CBT or mindfulness, or if they start to talk about medication. If their first go-to is medication, and you can see that really besides medication they have not much more to offer you, then immediately this is not the person you want to be working with. Because while medication has its place, I wouldn't rely on it as a sole source of of helping you with OCD, because medication is a temporary thing. You take it, you feel better after, and it's not instant either. You have to wait like 2 weeks, 3 weeks to feel better, but you will feel a little bit better. You won't get rid of OCD, you will just feel better. Some people get over OCD by just taking medication, but again, it's temporary. You stop medication, your OCD is going to come right back. But while taking medication, you have to be on a pretty high dose to not feel OCD symptoms, or your OCD has to be a fairly low intensity OCD, so even like a low dose of medication can get rid of it. So basically, it will only lower it to a certain degree, like your level of anxiety. So you can't rely on it as a sole source. And if a doctor is relying on it as a sole source of helping you get over OCD, then they're not really helping you get over OCD. They're just putting a band-aid on it and, just kind of thinking in the now, like what they can do now to help you with your OCD. Oh, they can help you by prescribing medication, you'll feel better, and then we'll see in the future kind of thing. And for me, having experienced OCD, that's just not good enough. You're going to a doctor for a reason. And, I mean, with my clients, as well as when I was seeing a doctor, well, no, actually, when I was seeing a doctor, I was very naive and I kind of believed everything they told me. But, I grew up quite a bit since then, by getting older and as well as, emotionally just dealing with OCD. You start to see kind of how things really work. And basically, I mean, sometimes doctors are there to kind of make money and they really don't care about how you feel, so, you have to know that just because a doctor is a doctor, it doesn't mean that they know about OCD. It doesn't mean that they even know much about the medication that they're prescribing. What kind of made me extremely disillusioned about my doctor is when she opened the book and was trying to figure out what kind of medication to prescribe me, like from a medical book and then from encyclopedia, to see that medication that the medical book told her to prescribe me, how much dose to give me. And this is like a very good doctor in our area. So, seriously, you know, I can't believe somebody would be that irresponsible. What about side effects, you know? And I had side effects from medication, and when I came back saying, you know, listen, I'm having some serious side effects here, it was just dismissed as, well, you know, you have OCD, you know, maybe you're just imagining things or whatever, you know. So she wasn't that rude or anything like that, but that was the basic gist. So the doctor has to know beyond that how to help you. If not, that they have to refer you to people who do know how to help you. And from my personal experience, I was referred to a CBT specialist, which was good. And CBT does help you. The only problem I find with CBT, and CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, Basically, CBT really looks at your obsession, your specific obsession, and helps you create a hierarchy. So, for example, if your obsession is, um, what can we say? Okay, so say you have a fear that you will hit somebody while driving, right? So you avoid all driving. Especially what scares you is driving in a very busy area, say around the school, for example, because you're afraid like some little kid can run out in front of the car and you won't see them because they're so small, something like that, right? So that is your biggest fear. CBT will work up to it. So for example, at first you will drive, you know, just a little bit. Then you'll drive in an area that's not near the school, but just something kind of to get you used to driving again, and because if you're avoiding driving altogether, right? And slowly will get you closer and closer to what you fear the most, which is driving by a school. And then when you're ready for it, when you've faced all of your other fears, it will get to this point, and then, you know, you'll drive by the school, and by that time it won't feel like a big deal to you, so you'll be able to do it and say, okay, it's fine, I'm not experiencing high anxiety. You might get some anxiety, but it won't be high. The problem with CBT, and CBT is actually like used a lot for OCD. It's kind of the go-to thing. The only thing I don't like about it is it really focuses on the specific obsession rather than how OCD works, and, you know, giving the person the background. And again, CBT is just kind of like an umbrella term, and really this kind of thing is more like an ERP, which is exposure and response prevention. And basically, you're exposing yourself to a feared situation and you're preventing response of fear. So, and CBT can also include things like mindfulness and, you know, other techniques. But most of the time, they really focus on the hierarchy thing, and they're not explaining to the person how OCD works, because OCD has a very specific mode of operation, and it functions in a way that's very logical. So if, for example, like I talked in the other shows or my other videos, that if you do reassurance today, you will feel worse tomorrow, you know, or if you avoid today, you will feel worse about that situation tomorrow. And there's a lot of, you know, additional stuff to it, but, you know, I find that the doctors generally don't focus as much on that specific thing. They're more so focusing on um, like the obsession itself rather than how to get over OCD in more general terms. Because see, the problem is like, yeah, right now you feel like your obsession is the thing that matters the most. But it's just because you are in a particular life situation, in a particular space where this is the most important thing. As we grow and as our life situations change, our personalities change a little bit as well, and what is the worst thing to you right now may not be what's the worst thing a little bit down the road. So when that happens, when these life changes happen, your obsession might switch, and then what are you gonna do? What are you're gonna start with CBT all over again from square one? And that's why I don't understand why these doctors are, you know, promoting CBT so much. While it's good, you know, we shouldn't have to do hierarchy every time we get a new obsession. What if you get a new obsession every week? You're gonna do a new hierarchy every week? Like, it's ridiculous. So anyways, so that's another thing. But at least, you know, CBT is at least will help you get over your current obsession. So it's a step in the right direction. but I find that CBT works best when it's coupled with mindfulness. It's coupled with just basic education about OCD, you know? Like, this is basically, the doctor just needs to tell you everything about the disorder, because that's the whole point, is you have to become an expert in your disorder in order to be able to beat it. I have a question here. Is discipline the main important thing to recover from OCD? Yes, I would say so, because, I mean, well, kinda, because you have to be disciplined enough to, it's not so much discipline, it's more bravery. You know, discipline is, yeah, like, you can be disciplined, but you can just be scared. And if you're scared, then you won't be able to um, move on with the recovery, you know, because you're afraid to do the exposure, because what if something happens or whatever, and you keep thinking about it, and it just makes you feel worse and worse, and you just want to avoid. So it's discipline and bravery, I would say, because you do need the discipline to keep going and keep yourself focused on OCD and not kind of going into other thoughts, because that happens a lot too, that sometimes a person will be very focused on OCD recovery, and then something happens in their real life that will stress them out and kind of sidetrack them. And then they stop focusing on the recovery, they start focusing on other things, and they might get worse just from doing that. So yes, discipline really plays an important part, but I would say that bravery also does. I think it would be like 50-50. So yeah, so going back to the doctors, that, you know, you want to make sure that your doctor, and also you want to make sure that your doctor is a really nice, caring person. They actually care about you. You know, you don't want to have a doctor who's just cold and is looking at you like a, I don't know, like money coming into the door, basically, right? Like, you want to make sure that they care, and you want to make sure that um, they, that they're looking out for you, basically, you know, that they always will have your best interest at heart, but, you know, they have to be knowledgeable. They can't help you if they don't know how to help you, and they can't help you if they really don't care enough to help you. So it has to be those two things. And I mean, you know, always think of your doctor as your employee, because you are giving them money, therefore you are employing them for that, you know, hour or whatever, however long you're talking to them. You are employing them. So what are they giving you? Is it worth your money? Is it what you're paying for? Like, um is it helping you, you know? And if it's not helping you, then why are you doing it? Why can't you find a better doctor, you know? Especially if it's not, it's different if it's free help, but or like if it's like, you know, through like the government programs or something like that. But if it's, you know, if it's somebody you chose, you know, they have to be helping you recover, you know. And that's, if you look at it like that, and there's no, you know, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like with my clients, you know, or when, well, I didn't really see it that way when I was seeing the doctor. I was kind of just believing everything they were telling me. But now I, you know, I really kind of see it that, you know, my job, like my clients are my employers, basically, you know. And my job is to help them. And, you know, to be honest with you, you know, I mean, regardless of, you know, if they pay, how much they pay, they're still my employers, you know. If somebody's asking you for help, you have to help them, you know. That's really just, you know, humanness, you know. So, um, you know, it's I think it's important to find a person who's like this, who cares, you know. And I'm not saying, you know, me specifically or anything like that, but, you know, I just um, every time a person comes to, well, almost, I would say 90% of the time, and I'm not kidding, it is 90% of the time that a client comes to me, they've already seen doctors, sometimes multiple doctors. So, you know, why is this happening? Why am I more skilled in this than people who actually have medical degrees? Why am I getting results and they can't get results? It's just, you know, I mean, I don't want to get into like a rant and get angry, but it just makes me angry, because it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, why can't you guys get it together? Like, you know, why can't these doctors get it together and get it right and help people? I don't understand. But anyways, yeah, it's just makes me angry, you know. And it's also kind of disheartening when you come to, like, in my case, right, when I came to the doctor and I was like, okay, I know they'll fix it, and at 20 you do have that perspective that doctors will just make everything go away. And when you find out that that's not true, um, you kind of start to feel very alone, that and at that time I didn't know how to fix it myself either. So I was in a situation where I really had no one, and nobody in my family heard about OCD. It was just like nobody knew, and I was feeling extremely bad and getting worse pretty much with every day because I was doing so much reassurance and avoidance. And I didn't really have a lot of compulsions, like outright compulsions, but it was mostly reassurance and avoidance for me, and like rumination, like trying to rethink situations and things like that. So, it's just be choosy. That's my basic advice with the doctors is be choosy. And another thing is, don't put a lot of stock into being diagnosed, because that's another thing I see very often with clients, is that a person feels that they have to be diagnosed because always the clients are worried, what if it's not OCD? That's a very, very common thought. Everybody pretty much has this thought. Well, what if it's not OCD? Well, what if I'm for really a bad person or whatever, right? Like that, I hear it all the time. And trust me when I say that if you're listening to this show and this sounds like you do have OCD. You don't need a person in a white coat telling you that you have OCD, because they are, and I know it's kind of like disheartening to hear, but they are just a person wearing a white coat. They're not special magical power person. They don't know everything, you know? So, you can't put so much stock into what they say, because if you put all this, if you feel like you have OCD, if this sounds like you have OCD in your heart of hearts, you know that you have OCD, and that should be enough, because it becomes almost like a reassurance where if the doctor told me I have OCD, then that's reassurance for me, that I have OCD, that I'm not, whatever you're worried about yourself being. But you already know this. You don't need anybody else to help you recover. You don't need doctors. You don't need anybody to help you recover. All you need, um, yeah, yeah, you just know in your soul that you have OCD, and that's it. Yeah, not that's all there is to it. There's not, there's nobody needs to tell you anything, because sometimes the doctor can tell you um, the wrong things. And sometimes they can say things that like will make you question things more or whatever, because again, they're human. Maybe they had a bad day, maybe they got off on the wrong foot, woke up on the or got out of bed on the wrong foot, right, how they say. um and they're not having a good day, and you ask them and they're just like whatever, they shrugged it off, kind of thing. And you can worry about this for I hear people worrying about it for years and years, about something like doctor could have said or did say or didn't say. you know it's a very, very common OCD thought, and it can create an also very common obsession. So it's important to just it's OCD. You have to keep going. And I'm telling you guys, like I've been doing this for quite a number of years, and I have never come across a person who thought something was OCD and it wasn't. It is always OCD. So if you feel like it's OCD, you feel like you have OCD, then you already know that yes, you have OCD because you feel like you have OCD, and you know how it feels. You know all these symptoms. You heard me talk about it enough times. And at the same time, this thought is OCD because you've had it over and over and over for so long. So all of this is not new. You don't need some special guy in the white coat or girl in the white coat telling you that, oh yeah, you do have OCD. Well, thank you. Without you, I couldn't have figured it out myself. Like sometimes these doctors, they're just absurd. Sometimes they do help, and with medication too, just like I said yesterday, that there are situations where medication is necessary. When I wrote my first book, I was kind of more against medication, but you know, just what through talking to a lot of people and seeing different situations that are out there. Sometimes the person is in a situation where they need medication, and usually this has to do with if they're on the brink of a complete mental breakdown. And I don't mean just, from like day to day OCD, getting like feeling like after an exposure feeling bad, getting anxiety, then going on to a new exposure, feeling anxiety again. All of this is normal, but I mean like they feel like their life is going to come to an end kind of breakdown, like they're feeling suicidal, they are they're just out of control. Um, if you're feeling to that extent, that you need medication. And also sometimes there's situations where um, a person is on a very kind of in a situation where they need to not so much recover quickly, but they need to be recovered for a certain event that they know they won't be recovered for. So for example, if a person needs to start a new job and they have to be okay while they're at that job, sometimes it's they'll have to take medication just to kind of speed things up. But again, that's only true if the person can't recover in time. And the only reason the person can't recover in time is that if they can't stop reassurance. If you can't stop reassurance and you don't have suicidal thoughts, then you don't need a medication for OCD, in my opinion. And it doesn't mean fully stop reassurance, but just, at least stop it a little bit, basically. So yeah, so again, just be choosy. Know that you are the boss. Even when you go into the doctor, sometimes it's a little bit like intimidating, and you think that, well, they're controlling the situation. You're the boss. You're controlling the situation, and you have to be conscious of that. And you have to, but at the same time, also sometimes I see that people say, well, the doctor hasn't helped me, and when we start looking deeper into the situation, sometimes I can see that they're not willing to stop reassurance. So if they're not willing to stop reassurance, then it becomes a situation of there's nothing a doctor can do if they're just not there. But again, if they're not willing to stop or they can't stop reassurance because they're too scared, then it's a good idea to consider medication only as a temporary solution. So I have another question here about OCD and drinking. Again, OCD is OCD. So if you wouldn't do things in regular life, you wouldn't do things when you're drunk either. So it's not, um, you're not a different person when you're drinking in that way. They're like, it's, and but the OCD always plays on that, like even if a person say had like ridiculous amount of like alcohol, like a sip or something like that, or half a sip, a teaspoon of alcohol, you will still get a thought of, well, what if it caused something, so it's not so much the alcohol itself, but it's OCD playing on that opportunity and giving you a thought. Because again, going back to the OCD, that like, well, how it develops, right? That the only reason why it's sticking to you is because it thinks you're in danger. So it's gonna send you thoughts whenever it sees an opportunity to do so. And alcohol just provides that opportunity to say, oh, well, what if, It provides another kind of doorway to a what if. So yeah, and I see all the time clients feeling worse after having alcohol the next day. Usually most people, if not all, people who have OCD, that they feel worse the next day. They feel something happened or something could have happened, or so this is very, very common. I've never once seen it come true. I don't think it would be possible for it to come true. But you have to stay strong right now, and you have to move forward. I would suggest though, drinking is not really a good idea anyways. So I would suggest staying away from alcohol while you're recovering, if not altogether. You know. So, um, it's not because if it's dangerous, nothing's gonna happen. I don't want to give you kind of reassurance, but it's you know it's not realistic. But at the same time, you know, I mean, if you want to, you can use it as an exposure, right? So say for example, if you are going to like a family get together and you know they're going to be having, like everybody's going to be having some wine, um, avoiding in that case would be actual like OCD avoidance, and it's not a good idea. It's better to have a glass of wine and experience anxiety, but again, prevent yourself from feeding into that anxiety. So the anxiety can come in, the thoughts can come in, but you're going to do nothing to keep them going. If you are already at a point where you're really getting obsessed about a specific thing, about, say if you were having a drink yesterday, then you have to stop yourself and say, this is a common thing, this is a common obsession. I'm not going to pay any more attention to it. I'm moving on from it. So, and you'll see that at first the thoughts will kind of, become more severe, but then they're going to start to go away because you're not doing anything to keep them there. Yeah, so just like you asked, it's definitely OCD taking advantage of the situation. But yeah, I would advise against it. Also, if you're on medication, then it's not a good idea to be on medication and then having alcohol. So, by the way, when you're on medication, it's not a good idea to mix anything. So, because medication is doing something to calm your mind, so don't do like coffee or caffeinated drinks because that's also not a good idea. Yeah, again, another question is that like the person gets worse OCD when they're tired. And yeah, that's common as well because your mind is always on the lookout for OCD stuff. So no matter where you are, like what the situation is, if you're tired, if you're sleeping even, you can have dreams about OCD. So OCD never really stops like your mind never really stops coming up with OCD thoughts, but when like you're tired on top of everything and you can't really fight them, or you can't really um, stop yourself from like ruminating because you're just tired, you just want to solve it and move on kind of idea. It really does make it worse. Really, anything, any kind of fluctuation in mood, unless it's like to a better mood, anything like moods, like bad mood, stress, feeling tired, all of these kind of situations will usually tend to make OCD worse. So it's important to always kind of try to make sure you're in the right state of mind, regardless of how you're feeling about your OCD that particular day. But and again, it's like only watching positive shows, only doing positive things, making sure you're not doing too much. Also making sure you're not doing too little so you don't have time to just, sit around and think about OCD all day, right? But also knowing when to draw the limit and to say, I need to relax, take some time for myself and all of this kind of stuff, because you're already burdening your mind with the OCD stuff. So OCD is already too much for your mind to handle, and if you add real life stress, it becomes really too much. So now you're pushing your mind further and further into overdrive, basically. So you want to make sure you're pulling back. Yeah, and and the person says, every time something happens to me, OCD ruins it. Yeah, it's like that for everybody. I found that when I had OCD, I used to dread every single holiday, like, birthdays, Christmases, whatever, New Year's. Everything was like, oh no, not another one coming up, because it was like, me personally, I felt like, I was like like one of those like trained monkeys on the stage, and saying, okay, you have to feel happy right now, show us happy, and I know it's kind of like, but that's exactly how I felt, that I had to perform, I have to show happiness in this specific time, in this specific place, everybody's going to be there, and it puts so much pressure that you have to feel good this day. And again, just like with with alcohol or with anything else, that OCD just tends to ruin these kind of moments, that when you're under pressure to feel good, guess when it's going to hit? It's going to hit right in that moment. So I find the best thing to do is when something good happens or when something good is about to happen, you always have to kind of say, okay, something good is happening. I know I'm going to get OCD. I'm not going to buy into it. I'm not going to pay attention to it. I'm just going to keep going with my life. It's good that it's good, but and kind of expect OCD to come, because if you're expecting it to come, it's not going to create as much of a um, impact when it lands, because you're expecting it, it's coming. But if it's kind of coming without you expecting it, then it shocks you. The kind of sudden appearance in and of itself really shocks you, and that becomes a problem, you know. So it's very, very important to just say, this doesn't make a difference for me. I'm not paying attention to it. I'm just gonna let it go. And when I get thoughts, I'll get thoughts. I'm refusing to pay attention to it. Yeah, and just keep going with that. So that was our show for today. Thank you guys for joining, and we will chat some more tomorrow. If you guys have any questions, or if you think about something throughout the day, you can either put it here in the chat. I'm not sure if the chat is open during the day, but you can email them to me to info@youhaveocd.com, and we'll pick them up tomorrow as well. Thank you guys. Yeah, have a good night as well. Bye bye.